Okay, I think we can get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining today. My name's Andy Goodman. I'm the director of the Microbial Sciences Institute at Yale and professor in the Department of Microbial Pathogenesis. We're excited to launch this faculty search, which is a partnership between the Microbial Sciences Institute and 4 different departments at the medical school. And so we realized that a faculty position that includes appointments both in an institute and in a department can be a little confusing, and just understanding what this position is could raise questions. So we wanted to have this opportunity for people to ask any questions they have about the search. I wanted to also point you to a recording of last year's webinar, which was with a different faculty panel. That's another resource for you. So that recording is available on the MSI website. And in that recording, we spend about half the time just explaining the Microbial Sciences Institute and the departments, which is the same this year. So please have a look at that recording for that information. And I wanted to use our time today to answer your questions. And I have a great panel of people who volunteered to help with this that are here on this call. And so maybe I'll let each of you introduce yourself and just tell everyone your name and your department, how long you've been at Yale, or if you don't want to admit that, what your role is, and then maybe briefly what your research focus is. So I'll start. Like I said, my name's Andy Goodman. I'm in the Department of Microbial Pathogenesis and at MSI. I've been at Yale about 11 years, and my lab works on the gut microbiome and interbacterial and host bacterial interactions in the context of the mammalian gut. So Kaylin, do you want to go first or second?
Sure. My name is Kaylin. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Genetics, and I've been here 2 years. And my lab focuses on the morphogenesis of the intestine, specifically the stem cell niche, the crypt, and how its architecture regulates stem cell function.
Great, thank you. Nee?
Hi everyone, I'm Nee Addy. I'm an associate professor here at the Yale School of Medicine. I have a secondary appointment in cellular and molecular physiology, one of the departments that's represented or involved in the institute. Also a primary appointment in psychiatry. I'm also here in my role as the inaugural director of scientist diversity and inclusion at the School of Medicine, really focused on helping our faculty and facilitating our faculty having a sense of belonging and thriving, with a particular emphasis on underrepresented faculty as well. So happy to be here and looking forward to answering any questions you all have. I've been here since 2010 as a faculty member, and also did my grad training here in the departmental neuroscience program. It's about 17 years in total.
Thanks. Craig?
Hi, my name is Craig Wyland. I'm an assistant professor in laboratory medicine and immunobiology, and I've been here 3 years now. My lab's research is predominantly on studying viral pathogenesis and interactions with the immune system. And we work on a variety of RNA viruses, but mostly norovirus and coronavirus.
Great. Michael?
So, hi, I'm Michael Kaplan. I'm chair of the Department of Cellular and Molecular Physiology. I've been here longer than just about all of you combined, I think. So I came here as a graduate student in 1980 and joined the faculty in 1988. My research interest is in epithelial physiology, and more broadly, our department is interested in lots of things, including the relationship between the microbiome and physiology and metabolism in whole organisms.
Thank you. And Yachi?
Hi, I'm Yachi Ho. I'm Associate Professor of Microbial Pathogenesis. I have a secondary appointment in Infectious Disease Department of Medicine. I basically work on HIV persistence, single-cell approaches to study HIV-induced immune dysfunction. And we also use translational approaches, taking clinical samples and study mechanisms of HIV persistence.
Great. Okay. Thank you all very much. I look forward to your help with any questions that people in the audience might have. So one thing I forgot to mention about the webinar from last year, just to avoid any confusion, that was prepared for a search that was open to all levels, so full professor, associate, and assistant professor. This year's search is focused at the assistant professor level. So if you listen to that recorded webinar, that's the only piece of information that's really changed, and keep that in mind. So really that was all I wanted to say before we open up the floor for questions. And so your questions will be anonymous, so you can put your question either in the chat or in the Q&A. Let's just use the Q&A, and then I will read that back out loud, and then for everyone to hear, and then we'll look for help from this panel in providing their perspectives on the questions. So the Q&A is open now, and yeah, feel free to start typing your questions in there. And maybe I'll start with one just to, while people are writing questions in, which I was going to ask the panel to talk about whether their department is looking for basic research, translational research, or both in a potential faculty candidate for this search. And we have representatives from all of the partnering departments here, so they can each provide a perspective about whether their department is basic research or translational research, and what yeah, so how their department is oriented. So does anybody from the panel want to start with that? I can call on people, it might make it easier. How about Craig? I'll point at you first.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. So in immunobiology, I think the focus is on getting the best people. I think in the department, there's a number of people who do very basic immunology, from structure function work and even evolutionary immunology, to those who are really focused on highly translational aspects. So, and then there's a bunch of people who actually do both basic and translational immunology. So there is really no one thing that we're looking for. We do have a division of human translational immunology within the department, which is actually in a separate building, and has more of a human and translational focus, but no investigators are limited in as to what they study. And we encourage people to follow the science rather than, really trying to kind of stay in either a basic or translational bucket.
Great. Michael, do you want to speak
Sure.
for physiology?
Yeah, so I would say that my answer is pretty close to Craig's. We're interested in really cool science. We're interested in how microbial systems interact with mammalian physiological systems. Although having said that, we considered a candidate not too long ago who was studying interactions between microbes and C. elegans. So we're happy to look at all levels, basic and more translational, with the goal of understanding, at least from the perspective of our department, how physiological processes are regulated by and regulate the microbiome.
Kaylin, speaking
Sure.
for genetics.
Yeah, I echo everything that's already been said. The genetics department is very broad and diverse in our research interests. There's a lot of people doing human genetics, and I'm a very basic biologist in the department as well. There's some people that are purely computational and have dry labs only. And there's people taking patient samples and doing, whole genome sequencing on them or whole exome sequencing on them. And then sometimes even modeling those point mutations they identify or SNPs they identify into model organisms. So I think nothing really is excluded when thinking about genetics. Simply using a genetic model is enough.
Yachi?
I agree with what the other panelists have said, but what I'm saying is that I came from a very translational background that we work mostly on clinical samples, but I'm in a department that has a lot of very basic, very rigorous, solid basic scientists and bacteriologists. So I asked Jorge, what does he want me to bring into the department? And he said, we just do the best science, no matter what approach, what directions, it's just the best science that we're pursuing.
Great, okay. Questions, some very good questions have come in now, so I'll just turn over, and we don't need everyone to answer every single thing, so we can get through many of them. So the first question that came in from you is, what are the prospects of very basic biology research at MSI and Yale with no obvious connection to human disease? And so maybe I'll answer that. The MSI is a combination of labs with appointments in the Faculty of Arts and Sciences and the medical school. So about half the labs are appointed at the medical school and half in basic science. And so the MSI is very interested in areas of microbiology that span from the most basic questions to medical and translational ones. For this search, the position is a medical school appointment. Now, as you just heard, many of these departments that are partnering with us are very supportive of basic research. And so I think, one way to get a sense of whether your basic biology research would potentially fit with this search is to look at the research descriptions of the faculty that are in these departments. And I think what you'll see is for many of them, they are asking very basic questions. The next question, I think was also partially answered a bit by Kaylin and Mike, is whether the position is open for computational microbiome and genetics. And the answer to that is yes, I would say. So genetics now has people that are fully computational. MSI would be also supportive of that. And certainly the microbiome is of interest to multiple departments that are partnering in this search. And I'm not going to go in order so that I can keep track of what I've answered. Here's a good one. There's many good ones, but I'll grab this one. Two questions. Number one, how much specific weight has the fact of having publications in Cell, Nature, or Science, I assume that's what that acronym means, or not, in the evaluation of candidates? And two, whether or not authorship data is normalized to relative contribution per paper, number of authors, et cetera. So I'd be interested. I'll let the other panel give their perspective on the role of, maybe to hopefully summarize correctly, the role of Cell, Nature, Science papers in evaluation of candidates, and how we think about authorship, or how authorship is thought about in your department.
So maybe I can jump in, because I've been involved in a lot of searches for physiology. And let me answer the second half of the question first, which is, notwithstanding our priding ourselves on being a fairly quantitative department, we do not have any formal algorithms for weighting author contribution or assigning any sort of number to a manuscript that relates to its impact factor or author position. We try to look as holistically as possible at a candidate, looking at the questions that they're asking, whether they strike us as important and as exciting. I won't lie and say that we're not impressed when papers are published visibly, But I will also say that that is by no means the only criteria that we look at. And we have certainly looked at and hired people who don't have a huge number or even any CSN publications, but are doing really good work and doing things that we think will be highly impactful.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this question? It's a good one.
I think Mike nailed it. Just for context, I don't have a CNS paper, and I had one paper for my postdoc. So, I mean, I'm an N of one, but I think I'm an N showing you that you can do it, right? It's not a deal breaker. And I think your proposal, they're looking for people with ideas and new ideas, not necessarily a big flashy paper. That helps too, though.
So I would add to that from a broad perspective as well, maybe not necessarily speaking to any specific department, but just speaking broadly, the School of Medicine. I would echo everything that Michael and Kaylin have said, and also to emphasize the fact that it's also about fit. So that's a very important component as well. So if someone has published a lot of high profile papers, but it doesn't fit the specific department or what the direction the department is going, or something that can be added to the department, that's going to carry weight as well. And I'll add to Kaylin's and make that an N of 2, because I also published one paper in my short postdoc, and a lot of it was about fit and trajectory as well. So.
Good, thank you. There's questions coming in both in the chat and the Q&A, which is great, but I'm having a little trouble keeping track. So let's stick with the Q&A, and I'll try to let's focus on that. So here is another question. Maybe I can answer. Is this a cluster hire or a single hire? And how do different applicants slot into the different departments? Do you expect applicants to declare which department they best fit into, or do all applicants apply within one pool? So that's a really good question, and I can provide the answer to that. So what we're looking for is one position. I don't think it would be impossible that we would expand to 2, but the goal is to find one person, and it's all within one pool. So we partner with multiple departments in these searches because we don't know who's going to apply, and we want to have the possibility of bringing in people that, again, are doing exciting science, have exciting ideas, and we think would be well supported in the MSI environment, even if they may work on one topic in microbiology or another. And so that's why we partner with multiple departments to allow us to do that kind of thing. So the applications are read first by members of the MSI, and then we divide them based on topic across one or more of the partnering departments. And many of them we will send those applications to more than one of the partnering departments if there's overlap. So you're welcome to specify one department that you think would be the best match for you in your application, but it's not required. And we may, even if you do specify one department, we may show your application to another one as well. Again, it's one application pool, hopefully, again, giving us the best ability to find people that we think will thrive at MSI, and even if they're not working on the topic that matches with any specific department. Yes, these are all good questions. So here's another one about the application. Someone is wondering how important it is for the decision-making process that an applicant has already successfully raised grant money. Perspectives on that?
So maybe I'll jump in again, just because I've been involved in a number of searches. It is by no means a prerequisite. I would say that most of the people we've hired, probably in the 3/4 range, have not successfully raised grant money that they can use as assistant professors. Many of them have received fellowships to support their postdoctoral work. Some certainly have received grant money, but that is not a major factor. What is important is that if you're invited to visit and give a chalk talk, the purpose of that is to demonstrate that you have ideas that are exciting and fundable, and that you can present them in the context of a grant application that has a prospect for being successful. So to the extent that you sort of earned yourself a little bit of a buy by showing that you've already succeeded in getting funding, whether it's through a K-99 or some other mechanism, that can be helpful, but it's by no means a prerequisite. Really, what we're trying to assess is, can you build a self-sustaining fundable research program?
Great. I would echo that from the MSI perspective as well, that is not a determining criteria. I think that as Michael said, the ability to explain your work clearly to people who are most likely not in your immediate field of expertise is something that is beneficial in job applications and in grant applications also. So I think we do look for people who, again, we think will be able to put together a compelling and independently funded research program.
With that said, I think you should apply for funding, even if you don't get it. I think as an assistant professor, it's very helpful to have that cushion of that K if you can get it. It's a little bit of a crapshoot at sometimes, but it gives you a little bit buffer and lets you take more risk. So it's helpful for your own sake. And learning how to write grants is difficult, and it's a good opportunity now as a postdoc to do it.
Great. Okay, here's one. Again, I'm going kind of in a random order from how they came in. Somebody asked to ask about the evaluation criteria for promotion from assistant to associate professor. So I can briefly explain how the MSI plays a role in this, but I would like to hear also from especially our junior faculty, how they have, what has been their experience as assistant professors or recent associate professors and that process. So first, just to give the MSI perspective, these appointments are full primary appointments in one of the participating departments, and tenure is decided at the first level by that department. And then after that approval by the university, medical school promotions and tenure committee. So my role as director of MSI in that process is as a member of the mentoring committee that any assistant professor will have with their department. So I'm a member of that committee, even though I'm not a member of the department. And I also provide feedback during the review process, both at the departmental level and at the university level, so that I can talk about how the junior faculty at MSI have contributed to efforts within the MSI that their own departments may not be as involved in. So I don't vote on people's tenure, but I serve as an advocate for people throughout the process at MSI. But okay, so let's go over to maybe somebody else wants to on the panel wants to give their perspective
Yes, I would like to speak up for this. So I just got promoted to associate professor this summer. I came here in 2017, September 1st. So I was promoted, so like about 4-year time. So for this promotion, in the very beginning, like I worry about this, about my how I'm gonna be like staying in this academia safely. So what I learned is that my department chair, Jorge, and I have several faculty, senior faculties, they just show this enthusiasm, this passion that they want me to survive and to succeed. That if I cannot get tenure, I think Jorge will be very, very sad, probably even more sad than I would be. That they just like, do you need help? Do you have enough? Do you need help? And you don't have a lab setup. Let me provide the space. You can work here first to get your data out, for example. So when I look back, I got promoted, and it's of course thanks to many help from the department. But I would say in my understanding is that I have published work outside my lab. So without my previous mentor on the paper, it can be distinguished as this is quite different work from what my previous mentor did. And then it showed that this is a solid piece of work. And I raised my independent funding. I assembled a group of people. They all seem to enjoying my research program. So that's what I thought. I have never heard of any specific requirement of you need to have some whatever level of impact factor papers to get tenured. That's probably not what I thought. Otherwise, I won't be here. So it's any solid independent work I think will qualify for tenure.
Nee, I wanted to ask you, I saw you just unmuted. I wanted your perspective on this and sort of where you see your role fitting in as far as mentorship and support for people at the assistant professor pre-tenure point.
Right. I guess we were in the same mindset timing wise. So I can definitely address that. I also wanted to highlight, Andy, a point that you made and Yachi made as well around both the mentorship from the department itself and then also taking advantage and being in touch with people about opportunities. So I think that's something that has definitely improved over the years as many departments have implemented mentoring programs. But the other theme that came out is the fact that people are often willing to be able to contribute, but often sometimes are not sure if they haven't been asked. So it takes motivation from both sides, but I would say as junior faculty, definitely reach out to those in your department. People are often very willing to contribute those components and to give advice about things they've gone through and hear about your path and story as well. I think it's important to be thinking about from day one. But Andy, to your point, in terms of what we're doing broader at the School of Medicine, there has been more of a push to try and incorporate these things, particularly when we think about our underrepresented faculty around professional development, but even more broadly so. So we are starting to develop some programs that will incorporate professional development for PIs from day one. So really thinking about ways that we can have access to some of those things that are important for our success as investigators, but don't necessarily get taught to us as we are graduate students or postdocs. And a lot of the things that we tend to learn on the job and that we also learn from talking to other people. So there are specific components that we're incorporating that will have some didactic pieces to that as well, that will try and have cohorts of junior faculty who can experience those together around professional development, also around mentorship, and also around leadership development and leadership opportunities. So that's definitely something that we're highly focused on. I'm happy to, if people want to reach out to me individually to answer any more questions, but and to your point, there are some programmatic things that will be coming on down the line. And again, I would say really lean on those mentorship teams within your departments, the ones that have established mentorship programs, but also those chairs and others who are available to provide that support along the way.
I just want to add that I think it's, for all of us, we've experienced that our division chiefs and our chairs are actually major allies in helping us get promoted. There is not any adversarial relationship. There's not a sense of competitiveness. I think the vast majority of faculty who are on the traditional tenure track get promoted. That is not my fear as an assistant professor that I'm not going to get promoted. So I'm more focused on doing the science and that will come. And also, I think one thing that is a little bit different about Yale than most other places is you go up for associate professor before tenure. So there isn't kind of the pressure. It's not like a defined window where it's up or out. You have 6 years to go up for an associate, and then you have time after that until you go up for tenure while you're an associate professor.
So just to amplify something that Craig said about chairs being allies, I think that I can speak for all of the basic science departments, probably all of the clinical departments as well here at Yale, when I say that we sort of are like geese. We mate for life. So when we hire someone, there's a huge amount of hope and expectation and resources that go into those hires. And the goal is that we're hiring people who will be colleagues here for their careers. We're not hiring people with the idea of churning them, of hiring 6 people and seeing which one will succeed. The goal is to hire someone who we think will be a wonderful colleague, an outstanding scientist, and a great person to have as a colleague for their entire career. Obviously, the promotion process is designed to make sure that the individual has taken root, that they have successfully established themselves and built a program that is able to get funded and able to get published independently. But as has been said, I think by everybody, there's not a specific numerical criteria for any of those values. And I think the process is reasonably transparent and fair. And as I think Craig said, just about everybody is successful in getting promoted, probably because we do such a good job of selecting people who we want to spend their careers here.
I'm going to add to that just a little bit, at the risk of sounding too cheesy. I think a lot of it has to do with community. And that's what Michael is also referring to as well. The sense of community when people are hired, that they're joining the community, that we're in community together. And part of that community also involves communication. So one, not being afraid to reach out to a chair or others in the department to get feedback on how things are going, to have a conversation back and forth. But then also to have those ongoing conversations to communicate with chairs and section chiefs about what you're doing, because for the promotion process, those individuals need to know you fairly well when they're proposing you in front of the committee. So if it's someone that they've talked to and have a really good understanding about what research you've been doing, how that contributes to the department, why you're valued, that will make it that much easier for them to present you and that much easier for the process to go smoothly, as opposed to someone who they say, oh yeah, I've interacted with them here and there over the years. If they don't have that really good sense about what you're doing, that's also going to come across in their presentation for promotion. So just to amplify and emphasize what Michael has already mentioned as well.
And that also comes back to my role. So in addition to being on every junior faculty member's formal mentoring committee, I also meet once a year with each department chair of everyone at the MSI. And that's another opportunity to check in, to see how, both from the point of view of the department and the institute, what we can do to address challenges of an individual or help them succeed. So having that strong link is something that I started when I took over as director of MSI, and I think it's been really useful to have that. Great, thank you all. Another question here, on a practical level, how does being part of MSI impact faculty members, their labs, and trainees? So maybe I'll answer that. And so just so we're all on the same page, MSI is at Yale's West Campus, which is about 5 miles from New Haven. It was 12 years ago a Bayer research campus, so fully set up as research laboratories. Yale bought the property about 12 years ago now, and it's been continuously growing since then. So at this current point, there's about 50 labs out here at West Campus. That's where I am now, and that are organized into multiple research institutes. And so part of being part of MSI is being part of West Campus. And this is a community of colleagues that, again, are interested in various interdisciplinary types of work that might not fit so centrally into a traditional academic department. So for example, in the next building over is the Chemical Biology Institute, which includes Sarah Slavoff, who studies small proteins in bacteria, Jason Crawford, who is interested in natural products from bacteria. In the other direction is the Systems Biology Institute that includes Farron Isaacs, who's a systems and synthetic biologist using E. coli in a large part of his work. Jesse Reinhardt, who is interested in phosphoproteomics and again has been interested in engineering phosphorylated proteins, again, in a bacterial system. So there are these interactions between the institutes. Again, the buildings are all next door to each other, that can provide useful collaborations. And also the West Campus has core facilities that are here, including high throughput sequencing, mass spectrometry, microscopy, and others that, again, are actually used by the entire university, but are located here, providing the most direct access. So cryo-EM as well, providing direct access. Within the MSI, we think a lot about community. And again, these are labs that all belong to different departments. So their approaches, that's, I think, our strength, is that their approaches and perspectives are very different. So we have ecologists who have labs next door to chemists, and structural biologists who are next door to people who study bacterial pathogenesis. And for each of those examples, I'm thinking of collaborations that have emerged between these labs that likely wouldn't otherwise, because they're in different departments, but their labs are next door. So I don't think that these collaborations just come out of thin air. We work hard to have that sense of community that allows that to happen. And that includes sort of your typical things like retreats and internal and external seminar series. But we also have small group lunches where everyone at MSI once a month has lunch with 5 people from other labs at MSI. And through the course of the year, they've ended up having lunch with everybody in the Institute. And again, just to lower that inertia of going into a different lab and chatting about a result or asking about a new technique. So I view an MSI appointment as really an advantage and a second set of colleagues that people have that, again, provide a different perspective than their department would. So it really is giving you 2 sets of, again, colleagues and potential mentors that are excited about your work and interested in what you're doing. I'm not sure if that is enough of a practical level to answer this question. The logistics, again, West Campus is 5 miles from New Haven. It's about a 15-minute drive door to door. Parking is free at West Campus. There are shuttle buses that run every 20 minutes, both to the medical school and then a separate line to the undergraduate campus. Those run late in the evenings where they do door-to-door service. There's also a zip car system where people can take a car that's parked at West Campus and park it at any parking lot at Yale. So there's lots of ways to get back and forth. My experience as a faculty member is I end up in my department about once a week during the academic year for one reason or another. You'll likely have office space in or near your department at the medical school where you can hang your coat, set up your laptop, or meet with people, et cetera. So again, that's my experience, is about once a week I end up. Usually I schedule it for first thing in the morning or the end of the day at the medical school, and the rest of the time I'm at West Campus. If that wasn't practical enough, or that's not what the question was, just post it again and I'll do a better job. This may be related to the earlier questions. A question came up here about the specificity of the application for a specific department, or if one could be a potential fit for 2. I think I answered this before. Again, it's not required to specify a department. We will pass your application to multiple departments as appropriate, but certainly if you want to highlight potential connections with faculty members in one or more of the departments, you're welcome to do that in the cover letter. This might have been a follow-up question about the earlier one about Cell Science and Nature papers. So what factors do you use to triage applications to decide whom to interview, if not the CSN papers? And I'm not sure who on this panel has served on other search committees and I know, Michael, obviously you have a knee to provide a perspective on this one. Or maybe, the panel could answer this question from your perspective as a not so long ago applicant. What do you think, without, I'm not trying to ask you to congratulate yourself, but what do you think was your sort of experience of the interview and application process? What parts of what you had proposed resonated with the department, or did you get much insight into how the process went from that perspective of an applicant?
I can answer as a new, just recently interviewed person. Is one thing that I know happened to me, or I felt really important to do, is I'm an intestinal stem cell biologist. There are a ton of intestinal stem cell biologists out there. Some might even say the field is saturated. And so a question I got in some of the pre-screening interviews, the Zoom interviews, was, well, how are you different than any other stem cell biologist, right? An intestinal stem cell biologist. So I think, having an answer to one of those questions is important, and being able to distinguish yourself and show that you have either a unique perspective, a unique approach, a technique, et cetera, that they want, right? That is exciting to them. And a feasible but exciting research plan is always important.
Great, thanks.
I would also add, I think if, at least from the search committees I've been on and from an immunobiology perspective, I think the two things we care most about are your scientific potential and then your potential to be a good colleague. So, being able to, work well and interact with others and, collaborate within the department and the university more broadly is really important. And then also your scientific potential. What you've done in the past is great, but we care more about what you're going to do or what we think you will do.
Great. So maybe along the same lines, we probably won't get to every question. So if I didn't get to yours, please email me with the question again, and I can respond individually. But in the time we have left, I'll try to highlight the ones that are the most kind of different from each other. One question here is, how is an appointment decision reached between the Yale MSI and the other partnering departments? Does one's research have to interest and or fit all parties? And so to be clear, the appointment will be in one of the departments, not all of them. So you do not need to put together a research proposal that is designed to match with 4 different departments. It would be with one of them. So I think that what we're hoping to find is someone whose research will benefit from the MSI community, who will do better at MSI than they would do elsewhere, but then who also, for one of the departments, will benefit from the mentorship and perspective and expertise of that set of colleagues. And so we're really looking for both things. And so again, the research does have to be of interest to one of the departments as well as the MSI, but not all 4. There's a few questions about funding that maybe I'll try to answer. Maybe I'll try to consolidate them together. So there's a question about whether this is a soft money position and the trend of academics paying through grants, funding through private funding as opposed to grant funding, and salary support as well. So maybe we'll kind of consolidate those. So this appointment is, we're looking for someone who will have an independently funded research program. And what is typical is that a startup package would include full salary support for 3 years. At which point it would change to 50% support coming from the university. And then after further promotions, it changes further. If you bring in more salary support, so for example, if within your first 3 years you get your own grant that includes salary support, your startup is not reduced. So you can use those funds for other things in your lab, to hire a postdoc, whatever. And the same thing later on. So after the first 3 years, when the university is covering 50% of your salary, if you bring in more than half of your salary, you don't lose money. You can use that funds for other parts of your lab. So again, it's a hybrid system. In my experience, the goal of having a research lab, trying to get the funding for that is what I spend more time thinking about than the amount of my own salary that I have to raise. So if you're successful in getting grants that will allow you to have the type of lab that you want, the salary will be a the amount of salary support that's required will not be a major pressure. To be very frank, this is not a 9-month position. Like I said, there's 50% salary support after the first 3 years and full support before that. And it's, I would say, typical for labs to have more than one R01 once they're established, although there's certainly exceptions to that. So hopefully that told you a bit about the funding of salary and other support. If your question wasn't answered, again, just email me.
Andy, this is Michael. Yeah. I know we're I think we finish at 3, right? So I just wanted to note that there were a few sort of non-technical but very important environment and happiness questions that it might make sense to get to, because we've talked. Sorry, I think somebody muted me, so maybe you didn't want to hear what I had to say, which addresses the environment question.
I do want to hear it. I think I just clicked the wrong, when I was trying to move my chat, I clicked the wrong button.
No,
yeah, go ahead.
No.
Actually, feel free to pick one. If you find one that you think maybe captures this area of questioning, just grab it.
So I don't have a specific one, but I noticed several on the theme of, are people happy here? Is it a collaborative place? And I think that's a really important question above and beyond, the mechanics of applying or what we're looking for. There is no place on earth where everybody is happy all the time. Having said that, if my example counts for anything, I've been at Yale as a faculty member for 33 years. And so either I like it or I have a pathological fear of change. And while those are not mutually exclusive, I will say that the reason I'm still here is because this is an extraordinarily collaborative place. The ethos here is that people work together. From the outside, Yale looks like an Ivy League school. From the inside, it feels like a small pond. People know each other and people work together. If you call up somebody and say, I work on X and you work on Y, let's see what the cross product Z looks like. By and large, the default is that people end up working together. And we have lots of manuscripts that are co-authored with people from all across the university. So I think that the great thing about Yale is that it's got a lot of depth and strength in areas that are relevant to all of the directions that the MSI are looking. There are lots of potential collaborations for people who come in within MSI, within the West Campus, within the medical school and the main campus. And again, this is a remarkably low-key place for a place that is as visible and as imposing as Yale is. And finally, I will say that New Haven is an easy place to live. It's probably not the place most people fantasized about living when they were thinking about, where would they end up settling down. You think Paris, London, Rome, San Francisco. New Haven is usually not on the top of the list, but it's a very affordable place. It's an easy city to get out of and to get into the country. Because Yale is in the center of New Haven, there are cultural and intellectual and social resources well out of proportion to a city this size. And you're an hour and a half from New York without having to pay New York prices. So I will stop there. But I just wanted to make sure that those sorts of questions at least got some airtime.
I would like to add on to what Michael said. I can probably go on for like 3 hours about this. So I would first say that I came to Yale. One of the big thing I saw is that I saw so many excellent people, National Academy, Howard Hughes. The difference is that they're just so humble, so kind, so willing to help like young people. They are really, really nice. For example, so Akiko and Andy and many others, unlike some others. So for example, this is a small town. People are more like neighbors. So everyone is treated like superstars. Like everyone appreciate each other. And for example, one day I say, oh, and I said, let's work on brain and HIV. I just Google and found, oh, there's this guy named Ninad who is a big neuroscience professor whom I don't know. I just said, do you want to work together? He said, yeah, sounds interesting. So we just got a grant together. Basically, we just search. I just don't know him before, and we can just work together. And the second thing is that I find Yale is really like helping collaborate. For example, COVID. During COVID, there's this big chaos. So instead of freezing down startup like some other institute does, the dean actually gave young faculties $50,000 COVID gap fund. So we continue to use our startup. Plus, we get some extra money that's showing the support of young faculties. And then, for example, I will have a small COVID research I want to do. It's just so hard, getting to build 3 and then get patient samples, and everyone. Supposing people are just grabbing their samples, don't want to share with you. This is totally not right. This is totally the opposite at Yale. For example, Akiko and Albert Kuo, they assembled this COVID text were very early on. I said, Akiko, I just want a few samples. She said, sure, here we go, take them. And I said, I want to run an experiment, build 3. Can someone help you? So quick, just help us, like his postdoc, help our student, and we get trained all together. With like, just of course, sure, please. I've been enjoying this so much, and life is very relaxing and really, really affordable. I have kids and we're having a fun time here. So I just can't be happier. Sorry, it takes too long.
Speaking of kids, I have to run and pick up my daughter, but it is probably my favorite thing about Yale is living here, which was the thing that I was most scared about. So anyhow.
Great. Thanks again.
Sorry.
And yeah, thanks for those great answers. There are a few questions about some of the parts of the application, including the teaching or the questions about teaching and the personal statement, which I'll try to address briefly. So one person noticed or pointed out that the application package does not include a teaching statement. Is there teaching in the position? So as a primary faculty member in one of the departments, your teaching responsibilities will be equivalent to anybody else in that department. At the medical school, those tend to be minimal. So what might be typical is to do a few lectures in a team taught course at the graduate level. There are some people who do have other types of teaching arrangements, but I would say that's fairly typical. So teaching is still something that we value. It's something that is a great way to get to know graduate students and to help that program. We decided not to include a teaching statement just because of trying to keep the application as sort of feasible as possible. But there will be some teaching obligation, and it is not a major part of your time as an assistant professor. There was also questions about the personal statement, which I realized was sort of intentionally left pretty ambiguous. We spent a lot of time thinking about how to have an opportunity for people that didn't have a page limit to express their views on the opportunities and challenges of building diversity, cultural diversity, and really diversity on many axes in a community of scientists. So this could be talking about your personal experiences with diversity in your research. It could be your perspective on this. Again, we intentionally left it very open. We're not looking for a specific type of statement, and just wanted to provide an opportunity for people provide their perspective and their experiences with again what the opportunities are in their view and the challenges are in promoting diverse and inclusive community. I think we're pretty close to our time limit. So I can stay on a few more minutes. I've asked the panel here to only be here till 3. So feel free, please sign off and I will look at a few more of these questions. Panel, if you could look through these, if there's any of these that you feel like you're specifically suited to give a last answer on before you leave.
I would like to pick the availability of clinical sample question. Just one question on this.
Okay, thanks.
So I have MD.
Let's read it first. So
Yeah.
the question is the prevalence and ease of obtaining human-derived samples, such as fecal or precious biospecimens, for department members who aren't MDs.
So, and you can address the fecal specimen file. For example, I am MD, but I do not practice. I do not practice at all. So I do recruit study participants for blood donation for 100 ml each time, which is a large volume. So I came here, I asked my just colleagues, and my colleagues hooked me up to physicians who runs clinical trials. They have their IRB, so I just use their IRB as a template. I propose my IRB, so I have my IRB. I have my study coordinator, phlebotomist to recruit participants and get the clinical sample that I want. So that's easy.
Great. Thank you. Maybe I'll take the liberty of picking the last question. Somebody asked, do you feel that the MSI is a special place? Are great things going to come out of the Institute in the next 10 or 20 years? I think you can probably guess my answer to that, but I do want to take that opportunity to strongly say that I think we're building something that's very unique. And the opportunity to have colleagues that are not only from different departments, but also from entire different schools within the university. There's very few places where that can happen. It's a community of people that are committed to this idea and value the perspectives of people who have very different expertise and approaches from each other. It is, I think, again, what we really hope to find is people where we can help them do better than they would in a traditional department. So that's really what we're looking for. And I think building that sense of community among students, among postdocs, is a way of connecting these labs whose, again, one is an ecologist and one is a structural biologist. They might not know how to talk to each other so easily, but that's something we're very proactive about. So I do think this is an exciting and special place. I hope you will all consider applying, even if your topic might be, you're not sure if it's appropriate for this search. It will get fully read by the MSI and the search committee. If there's a question here that wasn't answered, and there's actually many that weren't answered, again, please email me with the question and I'll respond to you quickly. So again, thank you to all of the committee members for providing your time and your very helpful answers. Thank you all for tuning in. This webinar will be available on YouTube within a few days if you want to revisit any of the discussion, and we'll post the link on the MSI website. So again, thanks everyone. I think Chris will close us off with our couple slides, and again, thanks for attending. Bye everybody.
Bye-bye.